So the Hamilton Ticats opened their 2014 training camp on Sunday, and while there was certainly lots of football on a glorious afternoon, much of the talk was around the CFL labor situation. Coaches, players, all insisting that the potential of a strike isn't something that they're focused on right now, that they're focused on preparing for the season, on getting better, and all the things they normally say that training camp brings. One of the interesting elements of this story is the fact that a number of first-year players in every training camp, and those players are not members of the union until they play in a regular season game. And so it would create an interesting situation where if the union decides to strike, whether or not first-year players, many of whom are competing for a job, and this is in some cases their very last chance at professional football, would want to walk off the job halfway through training camp. So, I mean, that's something that will definitely be worth keeping an eye on over the next couple of weeks. The earliest, I think, the CFL-PA will strike is around the 12th of June. That's when the labor situation in Alberta, they meet the requirements required by Alberta labor law. So that would be the time when all CFL players could potentially walk out at the same time. So now, from the football side of things, the most interesting development was probably off the field. After practice, the team announced that they had signed defensive tackle Ted Laurent. He is a Canadian and an impact Canadian. He would sort of be in the same category as a guy like Andy Fantuz, as a guy like Craig Butler. He is a very, very effective Canadian player who can make a massive difference. So it's a huge signing for the Ticats, a really big deal for them. It gives them all kinds of racial flexibility, and they already had a bunch going into this, but now they could potentially play two Canadian defensive tackles with Brian Bulkey, or they could form a tremendous defensive line rotation involving Bulkey and Laurent and the Americans that they have. They've also got Hassan Hassimi, they've got Arnaud Gascon-Nadon. I mean, they are stacked along the defensive line with quality players, and Laurent is just, it's a huge pickup for them. So that's certainly a major development. Other things of note today, Fredo Plessius, the Canadian linebacker, getting a lot of reps at the first team middle linebacker spot. Greg White getting some time at center. And the Ticats going with 4 American wide receivers in many of their offensive sets. They've played with 2 Canadian wide receivers through much of the last couple of seasons. This would be a change if they decide to go with 1 Canadian wide receiver, Fantuz, plus 4 Americans. But again, the Canadian flexibility allows you to do that if you want to, and Laurent will just make that even more of a possibility. So lots of interesting things to watch on the first day of training camp. It's also important to realize, of course, that anything you see on day 1 could change on day 2, and certainly could be different by the time the season gets going at the end of the month. So make sure you check out the Scratching Post blog for all the up-to-the-minute Ticat news, and Monday's Spectator will have tons of Ticat news in it. So reporting for the Hamilton Spectator in the Hamilton Spectator newsroom, I'm Drew Edwards.